Okay, what's the next one?
Next one, Grumpy Cat on Broadway.
Oh, I love Grumpy Cat. Grumpy Cat's the best. I think actually on this topic of celebrity, I think cats make the best celebrities because they are inherently without fault.
They very rarely molest children.
Right. Right.
So they occasionally tackle children, and it's always hilarious.
It's always hilarious.
But to Grumpy Cat on Broadway, I can only ask how.
Yeah, what's going on? Why is Grumpy Cat on Broadway?
They apparently brought Grumpy Cat up on stage during a performance of Cats on Friday.
Of course they did.
Do you know what Grumpy Cat's real name is?
I do not.
It's tartar sauce.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before.
It's tartar sauce. I forget. Grumpy Cat has a sister or brother. There's another cat that's also kind of derpy looking, and that cat has an equally hilarious name. All right. So, do we care that Grumpy Cat's up on Broadway? Do we give a bleep?
I don't.
I don't give a bleep.
I feel like Cats being back on Broadway is more notable than Grumpy Cat being brought up for it.
It's a nice press stunt. It's a nice stunt to get a little bit of press coverage without having to buy ads.
I'm aware of Cats, but I've never seen Cats.
Really?
No.
It's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pop Broadway, right? Like Broadway suffers from the same problem that films suffer from, that music suffers from, and that there's a lot of really good stuff that's so ultra popular that it's almost damaging that it's so popular, that if it was slightly more obscure, it'd be more respected. And in many ways, what's his name? Andrew Lloyd Webber, he gets that because he did some really good stuff. He did Jesus Christ Superstar, which is a great show.
And Phantom of the Opera, which is one of the all-time greats. I don't know, Cats came at a somewhat unfortunate time in the evolution of theater, because if Cats had come like 5 years later, it would have been a very different production. Cats was the last of a genre that's almost disappeared that I would call musical revue, where the whole show is basically just a set of musical dance numbers fastened together, and there is a very loose story that's kind of sort of being told over the course of it.
Sure, and Mr. Mistopheles is a super cool character.
Right, and each song has their own little cat character they introduce, and there's some vague stitched together stuff about one of them being chosen to go up to some, heaven allegory, but it's not really a story.
Right.
In the way that Phantom of the Opera is a story being told through music.
It's true. Spoilers. Should I put spoiler? I am not going to the trouble to put spoiler alerts on these videos. I'm sorry, guys. These videos, we're gonna...
Spoilers about Cats or Phantom of the Opera? I think at this point, if you didn't want to get it spoiled, you really should have watched.
That's true. But there's a lot of kids, like the average YouTube viewer is actually much younger than we are. So they might not necessarily be aware of it, but then with the revival, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm aware of it.
I suppose, but at some point you're just allowed.
God help us.
You're just allowed to talk about how Romeo and Juliet killed themselves. At some point, you can't go. Well, I don't want to say too much about the ending for the people who haven't seen Romeo and Juliet yet.
Yeah.
If you've only seen Romeo and Juliet and haven't read the book, then you need to be. Read the play.
Okay.
You get so much more out of it when you read it than when you watch it.
Hold on, let's explore this. This is pretty good. Book, play, there's not a difference? Is it just
Romeo and Juliet?
Is it just semantics?
It was an original play by Shakespeare, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was William Shakespeare. The fact that you have to,
it wasn't based on something.
No.
It was, okay.
No, I
So
mean,
reading the play versus watching the play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I could see that, because with Shakespeare's writing, you tend to need to read everything 4 times to go, wait, what? What does that even mean?
Though when I was in high school, they did a nice thing.
When people rattle off the dialogue, it can be hard to keep up.
But there's an interesting point, though, where reading the play as the source is kind of invalid in a way, in the same way that reading the screenplay of a movie. Have you seen the movie because you read the screenplay? I would argue you haven't. So I can't really rationalize how you could translate that to, I have to say, if you haven't actually seen Shakespeare performed as a play, you haven't actually experienced it. Just reading it doesn't count in the same way that reading a screenplay doesn't count as seeing a movie.
I would agree with that, and high school productions don't do it justice. Like, it really needs to be seasoned actors.
Yeah, and it really depends on the quality of actors, because I've seen some really, really bad Shakespeare performances where they completely missed the whole point of Shakespeare's writing.
And that happens even in the comedies. That happens a lot because it's really easy to misinterpret those characters and not understand the cultural context.
And misinterpret the words and what you should be feeling and doing during those words, and yeah.
And let's face
I don't
it,
know,
it
'cause when
takes
you
a good
take-
actor just to say the dialogue out loud and not sound like an idiot. Because it's really hard cadence and stuff that goes with it.
Yeah, but it's iambic
It's
pentameter.
hard. It's hard to know how much the actors today are performing Shakespeare, like how similarly they're doing it to the people who originally performed Shakespeare.
That's a
when
valid
you're reading a script for Shakespeare, you're reading it as Shakespeare wrote it. So you might be getting closer to actual Shakespeare than you are to a version of Shakespeare that a group of actors and theater people have put together today. They're not necessarily performing Shakespeare. They're just doing their version of this.
Right.
So I could see you could craft an argument there for how if you're reading the script, you're getting a more pure version of Shakespeare than you are by watching a group of actors perform it today.
I think a lot of PhDs would disagree with you.
It's probably true.
Right, because you got to also remember the historical context. So what happens
there
is
are
somebody
also-
writing, somebody writing about the version of the play they saw will provide context into how it was performed, and so we can have an understanding historically of how it was.
Right, and plenty of people who are performing Shakespeare are doing their research to try and perform it exactly as it was performed back then. But plenty are also not.
Yeah, Kenneth Branagh.
He was fine.
He's great. I love Kenneth Branagh.
I liked.
He
I'm no Shakespeare
I would make the
scholar.
argument that it depends on which.
Which
performance.
Kenneth Branagh?
Which
Which performance?
Performance.
He's
of
like the
his.
Nick Cage of Shakespeare.
I'm no
Yeah.
Shakespeare scholar, but the film version of Hamlet that he did was pretty good.
It's really good.
I am just forever saddened that Hollywood has failed to recognize the potential for a truly epic, gut-wrenching, like, battle movie that is happening in Julius Caesar. Because
Yeah.
all anyone remembers from Julius Caesar is the Et tu, Brute bit. And
Right.
that's like nothing. That's such a small part of that story. Like, there is a scene in that play where a woman takes a hot coal and shoves it down her own throat to commit suicide. And no filmmaker has yet committed this to film, and that is a tragedy.
It is a tragedy. Greg, let's fix that. Let's fix it. If you want to see Greg make Julius Caesar, we can start a crowdfunding. Leave a comment below and like the video, and we'll get that going. All right, what's next?
So for the record, I think Greg has much better original screenplays that should be funded before an adaptation of Julius
Right,
Caesar.
Okay.
right. I write much better original work than Shakespeare.
I'm not sure we're legally allowed to say that.
Yeah, you are. It's fine.
Well, no one is legally required to believe it. That's all that matters.
That's right.
Okay.
Quit futzing with that bottle. You know it's being picked up on all the mics, right? We're gonna have to fix that with the bottles. The bottles are not cool. Sorry. What's next?